Okay. So I have my handy notebook here that's got the phonetic spellings because my Polish is absolutely non-existent. So and they've all been very understanding about whether I mispronounce names, but I'm going to give it my best shot. But we're going to go down the line and just get each of you, if you don't mind, to introduce yourselves and to give us in the process something of an example of what it is that you're most excited about in terms of AI. So we're going to take this from the positive perspective. What is it that's really interesting to you about AI in particular? So Przemek Gdański, I'm sorry, Bartosz, I'll start with you. Bartek Ciołkowski from Mastercard. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and give me your sort of big, buzzy, exciting thing.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Bartosz Ciołkowski. Michael did the introduction on my behalf, so I'm representing Mastercard today. And I need to challenge Daniel. He's always doing very energizing opening, and he did it today with the flashing lights in our phones. However, I could really demolish his final piece of this exercise, which was handing over telephone to somebody else. Mastercard recently invested in the company called New Data, which is actually expert in passive biometry, behavioral biometry. And the device could recognize the human who is operating it. It's of course done for a security. It's very important during a transaction. Transaction must be safe. So in this exercise, when the telephone is handed over to somebody else, it would be automatically blocked. So there would be no fun in this case. This is from my corporate world, but I have one from my private world, and this is called loan mover, autonomous loan mover. So I invested in one last year. I have two loans, one in front of the house, one in the back, and in the middle is a very, very long stone path. I was afraid whether the device will be able to actually pass it. It is doing very successfully, and the last sentence, last year I saved 48 hours, so I could read books.
Great. Okay, Przemek Gdański from BNP Paribas. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what excites you.
Dzień dobry. Many thanks for pronouncing my name almost correctly. Yes. I don't mind. Happy to be here. Przemek Gdański, as said, I manage BNP Paribas Bank Polska. I'm also the territory head for the various group companies. BNP Paribas, for those who are not aware, is the largest bank in the Eurozone. In Poland, we belong to the largest banks as well. We are transforming the organization big time. We've emerged on a path of digitalizing the institution, changing processes, also in terms of using AI for certain processes. But when it comes to being passionate about AI, I'd talk about autonomous cars and the impact they will have once they become popular. And on one hand, it's an exciting vision that we'll be able to lay back on the back seat and read on our way to work, and it'll be smooth, quick, and efficient. But on the other hand, I'm actually pretty concerned about the impact of autonomous cars on the people who currently work as truck drivers, bus drivers, and taxi drivers. So the social impact of AI in that context is something that we should talk about.
Great, and we definitely will. Okay, Filip Grzegorczyk from TAURON. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Dzień dobry Państwu. I'm CEO of TAURON. It's quite well-known company in Kraków, in Małopolska. I'm running this company. It's been almost 3 years. And to say the truth, I've never been especially interested in AI privately. But when I became CEO of TAURON, I had to become a huge fan of artificial intelligence, especially in the moment when I saw how big work we have to do in TAURON to transform the company. We are transforming this company, and the idea, which is very close to me, the idea I want to achieve in the nearest future is a smart city, which can happen only using the artificial intelligence. That's what we're working on, and in TAURON we are becoming fans of artificial intelligence focusing on the smart city project, smart city idea.
Great, okay, definitely a topic to dive into further as well. And last but definitely not least, Jadwiga Emilewicz, Minister for Entrepreneurship within the Polish government. Tell us a little bit about what is exciting for you.
So the first thing, it is maybe not that artificial intelligence as much. It is all the time. What is excited in my job is to be able to create a bit, to change a bit, to take part in this huge change that is taking part in the Polish economy. And I'm very proud to be a part of this huge change and to be a part of the success story of Polish entrepreneurs with this fast-growing economy, one of the fastest-growing economy in Europe. And I'm also very proud that it is done by the entrepreneurs, Polish entrepreneurs, but also the investors who choose Poland to invest in. Just simply they trust us in the last 3 years. So that is really exciting. But when you come back to the artificial intelligence, in my public life, let's say, what I'm trying to cover, it is not only the big, very traditional entrepreneurs like steel miners, but also startups and new technological companies, but it is also the energy transition towards less being based on coal, more renewable. And what I discovered last week is that it is a bit more than 1 billion boilers in Poland, heating water boilers. If we can switch them off, them all to one net and be able to steer them, we can reduce the consumption of the energy to help us avoid the summer peaks of the energy. So it is really exciting that you cannot invest a lot in transition only to achieve a final reduction goal in energy consumption. So there is a lot of fields that we can experience, and also in managing systems, for instance, for public procurement, to make the system more efficient and less cost. So I can imagine that we can transform a lot from the public side during the last 3 years, and there is a lot in front of us. So I'm pretty much not afraid of the artificial intelligence. There is a huge potential in it.
Well, that's great. Now, we could just lift up on that topic, for example, and you and Filip could have a deep discussion about the impact on energy consumption in this country and the rollout, what it means for a company like TAURON. But what I'd like to do is actually to sort of peel back the layers here and think a bit about the interface between human beings and this technology, and the questions that raises, both from a business perspective and from a regulatory perspective, but also from a societal one. And I think the thing about AI is that we treat it as this all-encompassing technology. It is AI, but in fact there's all these different layers to it, right? It starts with the input of the data, then there's the deep learning and the machine learning part of it where it evolves, and then there is the output, the result, and how we react with that. So I think it's important, if we're going to ask the question for this panel, is like, should we have blind faith in it or not? I think the answer probably is unanimously understood as no, but let's dig out as to why. So one of the things to concern about is the integrity of the data, the starting point for here. And so I'm just going to open it up, and I'd just invite any of you to sort of weigh in here. How can we, as a society, be confident that the data that is being input into an AI algorithm is actually safe and something that we can rely upon? Anybody want to take that? Bart?
If we go in the same direction, I'll start. Yeah. So I think there is one very important principle, of course, on top of regulations which are already happening, GDPR and some frames which I'm sure will evolve in the future. But there is something which is called human should be in the control. And let me use one extreme example. It's example, I would say, from the past. Let's move to Soviet Union, year 1984. It's actually September, where there is a major sitting in the command center, monitoring the sky, and all of a sudden the alarm starts, notifying him about the nuclear attack from America. In theory, he should immediately take a decision and report it higher, which would create a strike back, and probably we wouldn't be sitting here because the war wouldn't exist. What was surprising to him was that the alarm coming from satellites was indicating only 5 missiles. So he questioned himself, is it a real attack or not? And he decided not to report it. In 21 minutes it occurred it was a fake alarm. So if it was the system only, we wouldn't be here. However, in some other frames, moving, for example, to autonomous cars, let's imagine there is a car driving today. There will be very high expectations that the car will be always 100% right, so nobody will die, which is probably impossible. However, we will need some frames which will determine how the car should behave. There are some companies saying the car will be protecting a human sitting inside. Some others are saying that should protect people on the street. So if this is the case, then we need to change streets, because everybody will abuse it and will be passing by the street wherever possible, and cars will always stop, so traffic will not exist. In this case, it will be something broader than only human or businessmen controlling rules. As ultimate decision maker, I believe it will be government.
Well, if I could slightly disagree with what Bartek has said, clearly at this stage, when certain technologies are still young, the human control is probably necessary. But with machine learning, deep learning, and further progress, I tend to believe that sooner or later, AI will be much more reliable in terms of the output and the final decisions than any human being. And well, the story from 35 years ago, right, is pretty powerful, but a similar mistake could have been made by a human, probably even more likely. Various analysts believe that with autonomous cars taking over the traditional ones, about 20 million human lives will be saved on a daily basis. So many people will not get killed in car accidents. Is it for sure the case or else? We don't know, but at least the common belief is that AI will do a better job than humans, and at a certain point in time it will not require humans to control something which is more advanced than humans themselves.
Okay, but let's remember that the algorithm that is making these decisions and presumably acting more efficiently and effectively than a human starts with some self-interest. Some entity creates that algorithm. And in the smart city environment, for example, where you've got multiple cars with multiple owners, multiple companies, whose interest gets to decide, right? And I think obviously it's important for us to think about where does it begin with the human. But Jadwiga, we were talking earlier about how do you audit the auditor? And we need to go back to who it was who created the algorithm, what is the interest, how are their interests being protected, how open is the algorithm. But if that's checking the auditor, how do we make sure that human is in fact someone in control?
If I may reverse a bit the question, because the question is, you are asking, why do we want to protect those data? Because we want to protect our freedom, our personality. So the question is whether we were free, really before the era of artificial intelligence. If you think about the ancient Greek, so there were people who tried to influence us, not by artificial intelligence, but by speaking on the agora. So it was a nice research that just came to my mind, made in late 60s, so deep communism period in Polish history. And the research that has been done was how the daily being prepared by the party, governing party, is influencing the society, whether it is or is not influencing. And the poll has been done among people who, deep supporters, neutral, and those who were against. After 3 months being feeded by the articles in this daily, so the neutrals has been switched into supporters, and those who were fully against, they say, well, maybe there is something in. So even without artificial intelligence, in the world, the history, we were influenced, and the idea is coming back, so what is the final goal? The final goal is the pure awareness of the human beings, right? So we should, and that is why there was a lot of presentations before whether the human sciences are still in or not, maybe only engineering now. No, the human sciences are necessary, and the education is necessary to understand what the freedom really means. So, and whether we need, so the legal system should protect us, of course, but not should be. When I'm taking part in discussions within the European Commission sometimes, and there is of course the huge notion regarding the free flow of data as the fifth freedom on which Europe should be based on, and we are putting it on the table, so free flow of data, but at the then we are discussing, how to protect, how to protect, how to protect. And my question is always, well, guys, do you want to develop artificial intelligence in Europe? Or, at the end of the day, we are adopting Watson solution, because we should be more ambitious in opening data to be aware that yes, it is grabbing a piece of our independency. But the question is whether we are aware of that, we accept that simply, and we are saying yes, because we want to live in a better cities, for instance, because living in those over traffic cities it is very difficult to bear with. So I would say it is not very easy to create, and I observed the discussion about autonomous vehicle. The most advanced discussion within Europe is in United Kingdom, and the question is all the time about responsibility, because who is responsible for the accident when the car is taking the responsibility whether to hit the bus or to hit someone who is riding bicycle on the left side. So who is the creator of the algorithm, or how to count it for the insurance companies and in general for the responsibility. So I feel that we are all the time facing this discussion, but at the end of the day, the question is whether we want to get deeper into those solutions, because we see it as a huge potential in terms of GDP, in terms of the fourth revolution 4.0, or we are stepping back and saying, no, we want to protect more and more, to be more independent, but we have to say at the end of the day, we are not accepting those technologies.
It's a huge question, and maybe Filip, you can weigh in here, because I know that TAURON is quite interested in smart cities, and smart cities represent, if anything, just a collection of millions of human beings. So, what are your thoughts on how we, ensure that there is integrity to the algorithms that are running potentially billions of devices, each with their own independent authors, essentially, creating them, right? How do we create this network that the society itself can have faith in, that those algorithms are working in the interest of everybody?
Just one word supplementing the previous statements. I would say that we always have to protect people against results of the new technologies. But I think that we always have to remember that protection means money. It's quite costly. And representing a big company, it should also be mentioned that big companies should, first of all, of course, follow the rules, but should also be ethical. So ethical conduct, especially when we talk about listed companies, if that's most importance here, and we always have to remember that purely legal protection is absolutely not enough to protect people, citizens, in the sphere of technology. Well, and answering your second question, I would say that we're quite aware of the complexity of the smart city programs. So that's the reason why we're not doing it alone. We started our program with the city of Wrocław and Ericsson company to have it as more complex as possible. Thank God we're not very much focused on autonomous cars. We're working much more on electric cars right now, especially infrastructure to fuel these electric cars, but it is an issue. Well, in my opinion, there are like two models. One model is a model of full complexity, and the other is a model when we have, I would say, there's no complexity and completely autonomous elements of the whole system. What we are doing in Wrocław is something between, and because we see that there must be a certain level of coordination of this issue. So we made some ideas. They were approved by the city, and with the support of technological partner, they are implemented in Wrocław. So I think we are right in the middle, and that's the best option here. Okay. I would say I'm quite afraid that it's impossible to invent the whole system and to implement it as a system, right? So many elements can create a program. Of course, in a certain period of time, it will become a system, but it needs time.
Okay, we're running a little lot on time. I just want to jump quickly to Jadwiga here, because I want to throw in a regulatory question, and I think it's important because we can't talk about the ethics of running these things without thinking about the legal framework. But the thing that's really difficult for a regulator's point of view, from a legislator's point of view, is how rapidly things are changing. So how do you create a framework in which laws and regulations can keep up not only with changing technology, but the very fact that the algorithms themselves that you're initially regulating are growing and changing over time? How does it stay compliant as it evolves?
First of all, I think that nobody before has mentioned that artificial intelligence is a tool. Still, if we treat it as a tool, we are on the safe part of the of the stage. So, what about regulation? As you know, everywhere, not only in Poland, regulation is always rather after than before the invention. So we are trying to be as much open as it is only possible. In terms, for instance, nowadays we're introducing the new regulation regarding the new stock exchange company with the special system of acquisition of the parts of the company, which may be based on a blockchain, for instance. And there is small, tiny little point, but we are accepting into this new regulation. We are trying to learn ourselves that we may trust on this as it used to be in the 19th century or at the beginning of 20th century based the companies. So we are trying to do it also in terms, because when we see some potential in the Polish economy, it is definitely financial sector, and it is not the accident that those two gentlemen are representing this sector here. And we feel, and that is why we are talking with the supervisory, closely with the supervisory of banking system in Poland, to be open for the solution using the artificial intelligence in this financial sector. We see that it might be, since the Polish citizens easily accepted new solutions in a financing system, they are open for it more than probably in many different areas. So we are trying to do to open the window for the regulation in this area as well. Although we are at the very beginning in terms of transforming small and medium-sized companies, on which Polish economy is based on. So we are trying rather to prepare the tools to transform themselves to use those opportunities than to make any solutions in terms of regulation.
It sounds as if the business of government itself needs to become more innovative and change driven and dynamic ultimately. But I know you're dying to say something, but we are out of time. So, and Dan is walking out of the stage, which I know is the signal of death. So unfortunately, we need to round it up. A round of applause to the panel, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it.